Hi, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8. Don't be customer-centric, be everything-centric with Data-Centricity. I'm your host, Fatima Kaba, the Director of Training and Development and Change Management here at Cinchy. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Concentra COO and SVP, Neal Oswald, joining DeMers, the CEO and Co-Founder of Cinchy. Neal, welcome to the Learning Series.
Hi, I'm Neal Oswald. I'm an SVP at Concentra Bank. I'm here to talk to you today about being data-centric. I'm going to talk to you about our journey, what we're learning, and how we're evolving. Looking forward to the conversation.
Hey everyone, Dan here. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Cinchy.
So what you don't know about Concentra is we're the 13th largest bank that you've probably never heard of, but we're working on that. We're starting up a new digital bank over our existing bank. We have a banking license and a trust license, and we have a huge strategic agenda ahead of us, and we're trying to execute with speed. And so timely insight and analytics is fundamental to the execution of our strategy. And we're on this journey to be data-centric. And while it's obvious now that's what we're doing, it wasn't so. We needed to do this so we could adapt and change faster. And becoming data-centric is a choice that we're making. And I'd encourage everyone on this call to ponder that choice. To me, the decision is obvious. You either persist with data silos and inefficiencies and the waste that creates, or you do the right thing and have a thoughtful conversation about the need for agility, speed, and insight that data-centricity enables.
So maybe before we jump into talking about your journey, Neal, let's cover what is data-centric. What does it even mean? And some people may confuse that with being data-driven, but it's very, very different. The way that we've architected systems for really approaching 50 years now is with what's called an app-centric approach, where the apps are really the central enabling technology. You've heard the expression, there's an app for everything. Well, there's a database for every app. And what that means is there's a data silo for every application. So every new app that you add, whether you buy or build, regardless of how you architect, it's standing up a new data silo. And the problem with that is each silo requires not just one integration, but many integrations. So you end up with this exponential growth. And the more apps you have, the more capabilities you have, but the more of the integration tax you end up paying. And while there's been advancements in application architecture, from monolithic to 3-tier to N-tier to SOA to microservices, it doesn't fundamentally change this. In fact, the trend is that the applications become smaller and more singularly purposed, meaning you end up having more silos over time. And in this model, the flaw here is that we don't have a choice as organizations to add new capabilities, but that tax getting higher is that problem. Like in a world where if you have 500 applications, well, that's 500 silos. And if you were to have total connectivity between all of those applications, you were talking more than 100,000 integrations that would need to be built. And that ain't going to be possible. No one can afford that. So data-centric is really flipping the model on its head, where the applications that are in existence in a data-centric model, they don't own the data, they don't trap the data, they don't silo the data. They simply hook in to the power grid equivalent for information management. So the key there is that circle in the center, using a network-based architecture to information management. But it's partly a technology shift, but it's also a paradigm shift. And there's people, process, and tools part of that are key to making this successful. But it's reimagining the role of an application where the app serves the data, which is very different than the traditional thinking of the data serves the application. But if you're able to achieve this, like the ultimate end game here is that there is no integration. So your integration tax goes from 50% of your IT budget trending towards and eventually realizing zero, because in a world where data is connected, it's linked, it's not copied, is you don't need integration. So that's what data-centric is all about.
And Dan, I'd add that it's just simpler, right? It's just plain simpler, less complexity. And if you can actually get your head around trying to make things simpler with less complexity, you then get speed and you get agility. And so if you think about, the wiring in a house, if you don't have to hook everything up in a house to the same junction box.
Right.
It's simpler and it just works better. So.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point, because I remember a few years back I had a realization that because I have 3 young boys, and I was driving my eldest's friend home, and they were in the back seat, and we were just chatting, and his friend asked me, what do I do? And I was explaining what Cinchy does. And through that conversation, I had the realization that data being at the center, where you're not creating duplicate copies, you're not doing integration, is actually how it should work. So I find that it's, and I've experimented with this quite a bit since, is the ability for, if you were to take a step back and forget about the fact that this is not how it works today, but how should it work? Like, this is natural. This is how a child would imagine technology working, is you have information and then you have applications that are the capabilities, and the capabilities need to interact with that information. It's going to retrieve it, it's going to store it, it's going to create it. But architecting it so that it exists in these silos, and you're doing all these APIs and ETLs and all this complicated stuff to move copies of that data around would seem very strange to a child. So I very much agree with the idea of simplicity as the underlying theme here. Sometimes it's hard to kind of see through the complexity of how simple something can in fact become.
Well, you just have to start the journey. So start to make the moves.
Yeah.
If we talk about Concentra's journey, which is quite a neat journey, we're small, so we are a little more nimble, and we have silos still, and we have silos that are starting to disappear as we execute our strategy, but we still have a ways to go. We conducted a hackathon a few years ago with Cinchy to test them out, and we ended up taking some loan reporting processes and taking them from several days of work to put those loan reports together to an hour and a half to put those reports together. So that got us interested, and now we have a third of our organization using Cinchy, which is quite incredible that we have a third of our people, using Cinchy on a daily basis. We've had some skeptics. That's the gentleman on the right, but I think we're evolving, and I think we're changing, and we're winning people over one proof point at a time. And as people find their data available to them easier than the old way, they start to use it and adopt it. And so we're making quite a good step forward as an organization, thinking about, well, where do we go for this data, and where is it going to be? And in 2019, late 2019, we adopted agile mindsets, methods, and ways of working to execute our strategy. And as a result, ELT meets every day to conduct a stand-up. And we have 7 agile teams across our organization supporting the execution of our strategy. And one of those agile teams is a data and analytics COE. And that data and analytics COE is meant to work across all the functional silos and functional groups to have a coherent strategy about how we bring our data together. And so data at the center is a bit of our secret sauce in our digital transformation. It makes us more transparent, more informed, more responsive. And if we had to move away from the idea that each team would manage their own data and own their own data and deal with their sole concerns as opposed to the enterprise concerns. And so the siloed approach was more wasteful and caused resource contention and wouldn't deliver speed and scale. So becoming more data-centric gave us actually more capacity because we were prioritizing the right resources on the right work around the right data, which then delivered more value, more insight, and speed. So it's working for us. We're not done, but it's working for us.
And Neal, that's you in the center, right? The hacker?
Yeah, that's me in the center.
All right. You look pretty cool there. And the journey that you're sharing is not that uncommon. It's something that I've seen a lot, which is the only way to achieve organizational change at scale is not to do everything all at once, is to start small. As Dave McComb always says, you want to think big, have that master plan, but start small and start by changing how you deliver the outcomes and capabilities that one way or another you need but you can now apply these principles and these technologies and these process changes and this new way of thinking and have it be a gradual process, because there is going to be skepticism, because it is actually a pretty big transformation. It's a bit hard to get your head around until you see the results, until you see the proof points, as you said. I had this realization a while ago, is if you look at kind of past attempts, because people have been talking about data being valuable for a long time, not a couple of years, but many decades. If you look at the evolution of data technology, going from data silos that apps don't even talk to each other, to doing integration in the form of a warehouse, going into data lakes, going into data fabrics and data mesh, and all these evolutions and revolutions in information management. Yet we still are talking about how data has value, and we haven't solved all these problems. And what I've come to realize is that each of these is really addressing a side of the cube. It's not solving the entire cube. And if you've ever played with the Rubik's Cube, you know that if you only solve one side at a time, you'll never solve the cube. You could literally spend your entire life just randomly spinning the cube around. What I found is that there tends to be this aha moment in folks. I know I had this myself, and I've seen it in others, that you start to realize that by moving the data into the center is actually the key. It's how you solve not just the red side, but the red side, the yellow side, the white side, the green side, and it's one effort that solves all of the sides. And if you think about the cube, it's fascinating, because on one hand, you could spend your entire life randomly spinning, hoping that luck falls your way. Or if you really know what you're doing, like the world record is 3.47 seconds to solve the cube. And I think there's 43 quintillion potential combinations there. So, but think about that, like an entire life versus 3.47 seconds is fundamental. So this is definitely something that more and more organizations, as they come to this realization, are going to be utilizing and weaponizing.
I'd add that all of us as business leaders need to understand the problems we're solving for.
Yeah.
Really have a crisp view of what we're solving for. And once you have a view of that problem, you can come together about the priority of that problem over other problems. And then you can also see them as interconnected and related if you define them the right way. And then you can actually not solve for it separately, solve for it collectively. Mm-hmm. And so put it there for everybody's use, and recognize that information and data are an enterprise asset, not a functional asset or a departmental asset. They are an enterprise asset, and solve for the enterprise asset, just like you would capital, just like you would people. Solve it as an enterprise problem, not a departmental problem.
Right. Yeah. So Neal, this is the evolution of your data fabric. So I'll just kind of play the animation here, and you can see the iterations over time. So maybe just talk through what we're seeing here.
Yeah. So we started, we're on a journey. We started with a small data set and what we could put on there in the short term, mainly around some of our needs around reporting and analytics for reporting, as opposed to running the business. And as we evolved, we kept just adding new layers and new product domains and product features. And as a result, we now have what we call operational management boards that are live and available and reporting on 10 lines of business. So we're getting really near-time feedback on what our businesses are doing and how we're reacting and how we should perform. This is quite an impressive picture. As I said, we have a third of our organization using it. And that's a lot of data on that chart. It's a lot of insight underneath all that data as well.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see the evolution of that over time, because one of the things that the data-centric approach does is it allows the projects that you deliver to pay it forward. Yeah. Whereas in an app-centric world, every project is a project silo. It solves the problem, it solves the side, not the cube. Whereas here, you can implement automated reporting, then you move on to the next project. Well, the data that was required to support the other project is now available on your fabric, meaning it's instantly accessible for you to use in the next one. And that's how that network grows. That's how the fabric grows and evolves, which is why the right is more comprehensive than on the left. because as you're delivering change, you're reusing the assets and data and knowledge and insights that you already have. And I think for me, that's one of the more exciting parts of Data-Centric is the ability to reuse the knowledge and intelligence of the projects of the past instead of having to just resolve the same problems over and over and over again.
Well, there's an expression, on the shoulders of giants, great things are built, right? So as we solved each separate domain, we were able to reuse some of that solution on the next solution and the next solution, as you say, pay it forward, Dan.
Yeah.
So the teams are collaborating across finance, risk, ops, marketing, tech, and the business to improve what we're doing. And it's working.
Yeah. And you can see that this is, a multi-year journey. Is it fair to say that when did you start to realize value through this? Was it right from the get-go? Was it accelerating over time? Is it only now that you're seeing the value?
No, I think we started in 90 days to see value. It took us a bit of time because we had to set up the servers and the hardware and the software, and also then start to think differently about it.
Yeah.
So that took a bit of work, but 90 days is not a bad return on investment.
Yeah.
So we first started with things we could see that were, clear and present danger that were needing to be automated or improved. And we took the highest impact areas first, the lowest hanging fruit first. And now we're working on more difficult things, but we're progressively getting better at it too. So people are not, cycling on it, they're getting it done and then they're moving on. So,
yeah.
So if we talk about, in our first 90 days, we replaced some critical end user computing applications, spreadsheets. So in a 350 person organization, we had 300 spreadsheets of consequence, which I couldn't tolerate. So we started to take which ones can we automate and what reporting can we put onto Cinchy. And so we started there. That was the first, 90 days.
Right.
By about day 200, we had people starting to collaborate and coalesce around the hub, and they're starting to share data and start to have conversations between finance and risk people and ops people about their data. And so still some holes, of course, not done, but you're starting to have a rich conversation about what should be first, second, third, and fourth on this next, and what should be next. And because we're in an agile shop, we have a backlog. So you could just put the backlog up there and you could say, well, the next sprint we're working on this, the next sprint we're working that. And it wasn't clean. Like, it took us a while to get the cadence down, but right now we're running pretty good on this one's the highest priority, that's the next priority, that's the next priority. And if you think about money that's badly spent, sometimes it's spent on the person who screams the loudest as opposed to the most strategic use. So if you can actually get through the noise and say, that guy's just screaming, but the real important need is this, we'll spend time on that. And that's what we're doing. And people are getting along. Like, they're talking about the trade-offs of my data first, your data second, that type of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it even in our own organization where we're using a data-centric approach from the get-go. And, being from financial services myself, I've worked in a bunch of really big banks, and there's so much power when data starts to come together to facilitate interconnectivity between what used to be siloed teams. So the data in the real world is all connected, and through that it connects the people and enables that collaboration. And such a powerful concept is using the data to destroy the silos. by eliminating the silos, you eliminate the silos of people as well, which is it's fascinating. It's all connected.
Well, light and transparency, changes all things, right? So if you can shed light on a problem, make it clear, make it transparent, you usually win. I mentioned already that we do these daily operational management reports. Most of the feeds are daily, which I think is pretty impressive, that we can look at our loan activity, loan volumes, our mortgage activity, mortgage volumes. We can look at our customer activity, customer volumes, by line of business on a daily basis and run reports. And if I'm an ELT member, I can click on my Teams app, go to my mobile device, click on the Power BI, and see the results from the previous day. It's actually getting quite good. We still have work to do, but we have one for trust, we have one for commercial banking, we have one for retail banking, we have one consumer finance, to give you an example. And I hope that the business leaders eventually will just be going to that one spot for their particular domain. But the domains also are crossable and everybody has access.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, Cinchy came to us and said, we think we could help you. We now have more clients coming to us from the other parts of the credit union system in Canada. And we have a lot of interest in what we ended up doing with the Cinchy platform. And we couldn't have done that like in a conventional environment. And it worked very well for us. And I think it worked very well for Cinchy as they did it for us.
Yeah, and that was such a good use case, partly just because of the cause behind it. It was also a good illustration of the power of a data-centric approach that enabled that rapid delivery. Because the process of onboarding an additional credit union, where they end up gaining essentially a white labeled, almost like end-to-end loan management solution in a box that's provided as a service that's powered by Concentra using a data-centric approach, it's like hours of work to achieve the onboarding there, and because you're managing access and configuration, you're not managing code and doing integration, and it's really creating. It's starting to organize cross-business interactions using data collaboration with a network-based architecture to information management. Now that's all behind the scenes, like the end customer who is applying for the emergency relief through their credit union. Little do they know that behind the scenes there's this interconnected network of knowledge, and these companies are all collaborating on this infrastructure that, in this case, it's all powered by Concentra. The secret is not necessarily exposed because they're interacting with it the way that they would expect. It's a fully digital experience, and it's secure and it's protected, and their data is not being copied and duplicated all over the place. But the fact that you can spin that up in hours, whereas traditionally that would take weeks to months, is the game changer. It's that speed.
The thing I'd add is I didn't have to hire anybody. So I got my existing staff to work on it, and the workload was heavy for sure, but we got through it without having to hire, many staff to do this work. Where other credit unions who went with a conventional solution were hiring up people to administer this program, and so that's why we keep getting referrals from credit unions to us, because it's a scalable platform that is extendable. In essence, the agility that which we went to market with is being exported into the credit union system, and as clients of us, it's a good thing for us that we're doing that for them.
Yeah, and I was fascinated to even watch that whole experience, because essentially what you were doing as an organization, which I thought was just really innovative, is essentially monetizing your agility. Is you had the ability to go live with a concept faster than most others, and that ability you can turn into a revenue generating center, which is pretty powerful when technology isn't just serving your own needs in terms of operational efficiency, but it's opening up new revenue opportunities, which is powerful. And I know that trend continues as you think about the things that are underway and things that are upcoming.
Yeah. So underway, we have we securitized some assets for credit unions and help them with their cost of funds and help them with their asset base. And we're working with Cinchy to create a validation tool to validate the assets they submit to us for securitization. And so hopefully, like by midsummer, we'll have that all done, and we'll have this automated tool that is quite elegant in how you take mortgage assets, validate the data fields, validate the structure, pool them a little bit to allow us to then securitize them on behalf of credit unions and help them lower their cost of funds and manage their balance sheets. So that's going to be very good. And of course, if we go to next, we're still building a digital bank, and I see the platform that we're building as pretty foundational for that digital bank as we get to be more client-centric, employee-centric, data-centric. We'll just keep extending that platform as we build.
So Neal, from your journey, what would you say are some of the key lessons and observations that you've had? I guess the first one.
The first one, well, I mean, we are very strong advocates of being agile. And we think that you need to be data-centric to be agile, because if you're busy trying to connect all the pipe, like the wiring in the house, you can't nearly be as quick or as fast as you want to be. Mm. And so I think that's one of the lessons, is we need to continue to be agile, and being data-centric helps us be agile. Yeah. The next lesson I give you is that to be customer-centric, you need to be data-centric. If you put the customer at the center and build your business around the customer, which we are, I think that means you have to have data at the center, so that you can bring the various relationships of that data to bear on how you're serving the customer and talking to the customer, managing the customer, manage the risk of the customer. And then the final lesson, I think, is if you want to use your insight and analytics to have intelligent conversations, you need to be data-centric, so you can see ahead, predict the future, start to get an insight into where you're going, so that you can take timely action and manage the business performance. So I think we're learning how to be agile, be customer-centric, and be intelligence-driven. And I think being data-centric is helping us do that.
I think just from kind of an outsider and partner kind of looking in, I think what you guys are doing is incredible, and it's cool, and it's game-changing. And by moving data into the center, there's a fun little slide, but there's data. He started at the bottom, lived in silos, but now data's the star of the show.
If you put data at the center, it's where we all need to go in a digital world, right? You in the digital world, there's 5 vectors of change. You have leadership, process, technology, talent, and data. All those vectors are changing. So you need some place just to keep a little bit more stable, which is your data. So if you can actually, let the other vectors move and evolve, and keep your data at the center, it simplifies the execution, and it simplifies the degree of difficulty of what you're trying to do, because it supports what you're trying to do, which is to serve customers, enable employees, and manage business performance. So data at the center supports a digital strategy, supports the management of your business.
Awesome. So thanks so much, Neal, for joining today. Fatima, back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Neal. Thank you, Dan, for your time today. It was a really great discussion. Before we do kick off our Q&A, I wanted to share that on May 13th, Dan will be joined by a special guest from KPMG tax transformation and transfer pricing teams to discuss how the future of tax is in real time and utilizes a data-centric approach. The session is going to cover why data-centricity is a holistic approach to solving organizational challenges with data and unlocking everything data-centric. It'll also talk about how data-centricity reduces data collection and analysis efforts, enabling tax teams to act in value-added advisory capacities, along with why the value of data-centricity for tax teams is valuable for any business unit powered by or enriched by data. Be sure to visit Cinchy.com to register. I'm going to pop now into the Q&A in the chat to see if we have any additional questions. I know Neal and Dan throughout the session have been answering questions that have been popping up in both of those areas. So let's have a look and see what we have going on in our chat and Q&A. All right. How do you keep track of domain definitions and domain relationship changes?
It's a good question. That's going to be largely dependent on which platform you're using. So as an example, inside of Cinchy, there is a catalog of domains and the relationship of data sets to those domains. And that catalog itself is version controlled and access controlled, and while it's descriptive data and metadata, it's also data, so it needs the same level of controls. But that is going to vary from platform to platform for sure. But getting your domains right is definitely part of, I'd say, the hardest part one of the hardest parts to get started in defining the boundaries.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Neal, did you want to add anything from your perspective or Concentra's perspective on how you guys manage your domains and the definitions you guys have?
I wasn't even going to venture because that's all handled by the tech crew. So
Okay, no worries. No worries at all. Okay, so we do have another question. I do know that it's just past 12 o'clock. We'll just take a couple of minutes just to answer the few that are in the window here. Let me just pop in. I see another one coming into the Q&A or the questions box. Has or will Concentra see the impact of consumers directly? Do you see them ever gaining direct access to their data?
Well, I think you do see that eventually. If you get to a true open banking world, you will be exchanging data with third parties with consent and permission and cybersecurity all handled. But you also think if you're building a platform strategy, consumers should come into your self-serve portals and see their client activity, see their things they've done with you so they can self-serve themselves. And so I think we're headed that way for sure, especially because of the people want to see their whole financial picture. They want to see what they've done with you. If they have a complaint, they want to, give you feedback on it. And so we're going to enable that through client portals and client self-serve.
Fabulous. That sounds
Neal,
great.
once you do that, Neal, let me know, because I've long dreamed about a day where I could interact with a bank and run a SQL query against my transactions and save it as an API. And yeah, that would be cool.
See, Dan, only you would want to do that, right? The rest of us rely on QuickTax or QuickBooks to get the data out of the statements. But yes.
Perfect. All right. I don't see anything additional, gentlemen. Any final words, any last things that either of you'd like to share before we wrap up our session? And again, thank you to both of you for your time and your insight today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Guys, have a great day, everyone.